Have you ever purchased plants that everybody's just like, you know what, they're super easy, they're just plug and play, and then you realize they're more like plug and pray? If so, stick around with me. Hi, my name is Memo, this is my channel, Houseplantygoodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see some of it behind me, it's tropical houseplants. So yes, apologies for the bad pun, but essentially this is a video of plug and pray plants. So as I mentioned at the very beginning, it is those types of plants where everybody's just like, they're super easy. You just get them in, you put them in, and they just take care of themselves. You don't have to worry about them. Everybody can grow these. And you realize relatively fast that you are not part of the everybody that they are talking about, yes? I've got my selection of plug and pray plants that I will be sharing with you today. And I do encourage every single one of you to put theirs down in the comments below. And a big shout out to one of you lovely people that suggested this as a topic. It made me giggle to no end. That's the topic of plug and pray plants. But without further ado, let's have a look at one of mine. So first one is a plant that I was very excited about. I got it in a recent unboxing, and I shall put a picture here so you can see the plant that I am talking about. And this is what I purchased as a Ming Aralia, or an Aralia Ming, or sometimes also known as a Polyscia Ming. I cannot remember which one is the correct and which one is the incorrect one, but I will add it at the top there. I can't remember if it's technically an Aralia or if it's technically a Polyscia, but I'll put it at the top anyway. And this is a great plant, and hopefully the picture that I've got to show you is of my own plant, looking a bit busted this winter. And that is the thing as well, for this whole list, it's going to be a varying different factors. Not everything is necessarily going to be the fact that I am an overwaterer, so I couldn't make plants that are not great with overwaterers survive. This one is a good example. This is a plant that everybody says, you know what, it's super easy. There was a few people when I unboxed this that were very excited about it, and they're just like, yes, I think it was somebody in the UK that were like, oh, we got it from B&M. And they've usually got them in stock there. For the non-UK audience, B&M is a tricky one to describe, but I think box store is kind of the closest thing I can come to it. It's not quite Walmart. It's not quite, oh, there's another one as well that they have in America. It's not Walmart, Costco. It's not quite that, but it's a place where a lot of people just go and buy just random stuff. Anybody in the UK who cares being the right word, cares to describe what B&M is to anybody who's not from the UK, please accept this challenge and tell people down below in the comments, because it's a difficult one to describe. But anyway, slightly off topic there. But this is one that everybody just thought, oh, you can find it in most places. It's a beautiful plant nonetheless. So you would assume that it is a plug and play plant, so an easy plant. And to a certain degree, yes. There's a few things that I've learned along the way. Obviously, one of the big things with this one is this is not a traditional kind of aroid that needs, and it does need like air around its roots, but this is a plant that doesn't grow off the side of kind of other trees. It's not epiphytic. It is a plant that grows in the ground, so it's a terrestrial plant. So there's certain kind of parameters that you need to bear in mind there. But the big thing about this plant, and I can also talk, I think they are vaguely related. Behind me here is the Tiversia palmata, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And I think they're closely related, and they will turn into trees in nature. Like they get quite large. They're not like shrub size. They can get quite large. And both this one, even in here, it doesn't do very much in the winter. It just kind of stalls. In my bathroom, which is where I've got my Ming Aralia, it doesn't just stall. So there's usually a tiny bit of new growth, and I've got some new growth on this plant, so I can't complain too much this winter. But there's a big thing. So In the summer, I have to water it every 3 to 4 days because it goes dry super, super fast. In the winter, that almost swings the polar opposite, and it's once every 3 to 4 weeks, if that. And keep in mind, the bathroom is relatively warm in the house. It's not one of the coldest places in the house. But light is the big one with this one. And I will get, this is the time of the year that pretty much from the beginning of autumn now until spring, I will lose. And this is why this is looking a bit busted. And it's not as busted as it will look by the end of this winter, because I've already had this for a winter and I've already experienced the stress of this plant last winter. Because by the end of the summer, this plant is lush and large and full of foliage and it's constantly growing, no issue whatsoever. Swing to autumn and winter and I will invariably, and I think it's almost there, I will invariably lose 2/3, half to 2/3 of all of the leaves to yellowing. And it happens all the damn time. So there is a slight panic going, is this plant going to die? It doesn't die. It doesn't look great in the winter. And I will say from what I have found, it is to do with light and heat as well. This is a plant that really, really will not tolerate even the slightest temperature drop. So if this is a plant that you want to get, my big tip for you would be put it somewhere where the temperature stays constant year round and has great lighting. So this is a plant that I have, if I'm not mistaken, southwesterly window, if I'm not mistaken. And it does okay in the summer. As I said, it gets a lot of like light and it enjoys it. But yes, in the winter, it truly, truly dislikes it. So for me, that is not a plug and play plant in the sense that there's a lot of adjusting that needs to do this. And at least I can talk from like years of experience of dealing with all of these plants, so I could kind of pivot and learn and adjust quite quickly, and also know that that plant is just going to look busted for half of the year, specifically where I've got it. So if you can give it stable temperatures throughout the year and stable light and the same amount of light hours throughout the year, great. This is one of the plants that 100%, if I didn't have a massive collection and I had one place where I was quite happy to put it decoratively in the house and have a grow light permanently for X amount of hours each day, this would be the plant that I would have there. But this is by no stretch of the imagination a plug and play plant. It is definitely a plug and pray plant in my experience. And the rest of the plants now, I do not have a single one because I have managed to kill every single one of the other plants on this list. Some of these plants might surprise people, but actually no, there is one that I've still got and I'll see if I can get a picture for that one. But the next one on the list is an orchid, and it's a terrestrial orchid. This is touted to everybody as one of the easiest orchids specifically that you can grow, even if you don't do well with other orchids, the Ludisia discolor. Again, only talking from my experiences. Like mileage might vary with this one 100%. This is definitely one that just doesn't work with me, I think because of my level of overwatering. So this is a terrestrial orchid, so it's not growing in bark. You would grow this in some form of a soil mixture. To me as well, and not to poo-poo on this plant, not the kind of sour grape situation, but I've even tried, I bought it once, I never bought it again. I have been given this plant or done plant swaps of people who just like, please can I have your plant and I can give you this one. I'm just like, I don't particularly want it, but you're so excited about getting my plant. Yes, you can have it and I'll deal with this plant again. It's not a plant that ever excites me. It's kind of a muddy-ish, browny, kind of dark foliage, but not in a good way for me. Plants, the blooms might have been its saving point. It does get like a spray of really tiny little kind of orchid blooms, and I was able to get mine to flower at some point. But it just struggles the most. And I do think for this one, that unless you are very specific in your care needs, and I don't even know what care needs this is because I never even bothered to truly kind of like crack it because it just wasn't that interesting for me. But this was definitely a plant that I would say is not a plug and play plant by any stretch of the imagination. Not for me. Killed 2, 3 so far of these. And realistically, mark my words, I do not want to have another one of these. The Macodis patola, I think that's the word for it, and I'll see if I can put a picture. I'm currently growing in a terrarium under my little micro orchids, and that is doing fine. Those plants, generally for me, and those are meant to be harder than the Ludisia discolor. They're just like, if you want to get into terrestrial orchids, try the Ludisia discolor first. It is the easiest plant in the world, and I think that's bit problematic, because if somebody doesn't do well with that one, it stops them from moving on to anything else that is kind of a jewel orchid or a kind of terrestrial orchid, which is a shame because, as I said, at least in my experience, I found the Macodis petola to be vastly easier, and that was the one that I wanted all along because it had much more interesting foliage, and hopefully I've got images that I can put here, over the Ludisia discolor. So again, not to poo-poo on the plant, it just didn't work for me, but 100% not a plug and play plant for me. Oh, and I had to put a Hoya on here somewhere. And it's interesting because this is a plant that I keep seeing on a lot of retailers' websites as an easy plant to care for. And some people that are into Hoyas and some that are not might disagree that Hoyas are easy. Some people might agree that all Hoyas are easy. It just depends on kind of where you're coming to it from. And I think this one I've still got. And it is the Hoya krohniana. Oh, and I cannot remember the kind of PC term for it as well. It had a very inappropriate name, and years ago somebody corrected me on this, and thanks for correcting me on this. So I'm not using that name anymore, but I'm just going to go with the Hoya krohniana for this one. It's the silvery one, essentially. Apparently touted as a super easy plant. I am now on plant 2 or 3 of this, and I keep killing it. I keep doing really well. The summer, it loves life. It doesn't grow very fast at all. I think it has to be one of my slowest growing Hoya, which is saying something. But then come the winter, it just hates life. If anybody knows what I'm doing wrong, I think I've still got a tiny bit of one left somewhere. Probably in my kind of kitchen, so it's kind of getting blasted by south-facing window. It doesn't seem that the light isn't the issue here. It might be something to do with the watering. It might be something to do with the kind of moisture on it. I don't know. I don't know if this is because there are certain types of Hoyas that I find if you treat them much more like a succulent, they'll do great. There's other Hoyas that really do not want that, and obviously it depends on where that specific Hoya is coming from. Have I ever searched to figure out where the krohniana comes from? No, I probably should. Bad memo. Should probably like practice what I preach and actually do some more kind of in-depth research into the region of the world where that plant comes from, because that might give me a bit of an indication as to why it is struggling. However, this is definitely a plant that is out there and it's being pushed as an easy care houseplant. My experience, it really isn't. Like, to a certain point, yes, it is a Hoya, and yes, you can put it somewhere and it will do something. And I think this specific one that I've got, and hopefully I would have got a picture to put it here somewhere. I'll go and find a picture to add it here. This is probably 2 years in, and it hasn't got much bigger than what it was 2 years ago. It hasn't died. It had a few new leaves, but it's also lost some leaves. This is, I mean, all Hoyas for me tend to be mealybug magnets generally, but this one more so than any other. I spend half of my summer treating it for mealybugs. And again, it might just be my scenarios, but a lot of the mealybugs seem to really love this specific one, more so than any other Hoya. So that's something to say. But yeah, not a plug and play plant, 100% a plug and pray plant in my experience. And this is another plant that I do have very difficult to get out of. It's kind of trailing down. I will add a picture either of mine. It's looking busted. It's looking like it's on the way out. Or I'll find a better looking plant online so I can give you an idea of what this plant looks like. So then this might be one of the surprising ones. The Philodendron scandens. The Brazil, which I had and I've killed. The neon, which I have and it's surviving. To be fair to it, including my green, my traditional kind of Philodendron scandens, they have both been, that one and the neon I've had 7 years now, and it's still there. That's the best thing that I can say about these plants. The scanden is looking a lot better because I've managed to like put it in a corner on a shelf and it's kind of trailed down. But I used to, when I was first starting with the hobby again, as I said, 6 or 7 years ago, this is one that was really pushed and touted as super easy. Look, I've put it there and it's tripled in size overnight. And I'm just like, how? how all the other plants I seem to be keeping happy. That is one that is not happy, never has been. It does okay. I mean, it's of a certain length now, but again, 7 years. You'd expect something after 7 years. And this is touted, at least still to this day, as one of the easiest philodendrons that you can get. And granted, had I been growing it on a moss pole, and I will caveat that before anybody jumps in the comments, I've always grown them as trailing plants. That's fine. But again, I'm not the only one that's growing it as a trailing plant, and a lot of other people have had great successes. I do not know what I'm doing with these. I think both of them at this point, and the only time where they were looking a bit better, soil just did not work for either one of these plants for me, both the neon and the traditional green scandens. They're both in ponds, so they're both in semi-hydro. They don't always have a reservoir, at least not in the winter, basically. It's just in the summer that they have a reservoir. And it's not that exciting. No, don't come for me, it's just my opinion, but it's not as exciting. I would much rather have most of the other pothos out there. The leaves are a bit more interesting, it's a bit more robust, it grows a heck of a lot faster than the Philodendron scandens does, and there's different forms of it as well. So it is one, there was another one, there was another one that was very similar to the Philodendron scandens, the Rio, but it was a different one, which had a bit of cream in there as well, and everybody was losing their minds about that one, and it came across me, and it got cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and just like, somebody was just like, you should try it, and I'm just like, I'm alright, I've got the other two that are plug and pray plants. I don't need another one. I don't need that. It's a shame because I wish it was. I wish it was for me. I wish it was. And I can talk a bit more passionately about some of these that I've got multiple different versions of it to just kind of say maybe what I'm giving it didn't work. And we are not all the same, but there's also, if I am struggling with it, I am sure there's going to be other people that have struggled with this. And if you are one of them, please let me know that I'm not alone down below. I don't think I am. I think there's going to be plants that people do well with and some people don't do well, and vice versa, and all of these things. This is normal. This is like how we care for things, the kind of the space that we provide for these plants, where they are, like you personally, your personality, and whether or not you want this plant to do well. I will say that the Philodendron micans, slower than the scandens, which is saying something. I had great success with that one, and that's a velvet leaf philodendron. Sometimes that's also not considered a beginner's plant. And to be fair, people who've been here long enough will know that most of these easy plants are beginner plants. The granddaddy of all is going to be the last one on this list, and you can guess which one it is potentially in the comments down below. But yes, the Philodendron scandens for me, not as easy as people were touting it to be. The next one should come with a trigger warning, and I am so sorry for anybody who has tried to grow this and has not done well with it. It is the ultimate plant that everybody just, that is super easy. Just put it somewhere and you knew it had to be on this list. The Ficus lyrata, or the Fiddle Leaf Fig. I don't know, is anybody still pushing, or is anybody still buying Fiddle Leaf Figs? It feels like 6-7 years ago kind of a thing. It doesn't feel like a right now kind of a thing. I think most people by now are wise to it. And I will say, and hopefully I'll find a picture of my own one. If not, I'll put a picture. But if I can find a picture of my own one, you might notice that it is quite a small one. And I did get the Ficus lyrata bambino. So it was the more kind of dwarf version of the larger ones. So I don't know if the larger ones are any easier. I've never grown it. The bambino put me off it entirely too much. So I'm just like, I know this is not for me. This is not for me. And the problem with that one wasn't that it needs very specific care, that it can get some very specific pests at very specific times of its life. It was the sheer level of edema on this plant as well. And I've spoken about edema on my channel before, and it's on most other kind of traditional leafy type of houseplants, probably more on the kind of epiphytic houseplants. You get them, and at least I get them as kind of big water blisters that happen, like big kind of cysty spots almost that happen on plant surfaces. With the Ficus lyrata, what it comes up with, it tends to look more like What, if you've ever searched for plant edema online, those are generally the pictures that you'll tend to get, not this plant specifically, but the ones that might get it in the garden, for instance. And it's these kind of speckly, like red spots. And again, I was just starting off with this, and again, this is a plant that they tend to still push towards beginners. And you're sitting there going, what are the red spots? Have I got spider mites at that point? Because everybody just thought it's the red spotted spider mite or whatever it was. And I'm just like, but these things are not moving. I don't know what it is or what is happening here. I did not have a clue. It didn't keep its leaves for too long. And could I have chopped it and tried to get it to branch because I had just the one that was a column? It just wasn't a great plant. It just wasn't a great plant. And it wasn't what was promised as easy and plug and play and you really don't have to worry about it. And I know, again, some people might find it easy, but for me, nope, 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 nope. Definitely a plant that I will never again be attempting both the large and the small form in any way or form. The next one on the list really, really, really saddens me because I really wanted to get this to work for me. And there's a variegated form now as well that you can get. And I cannot remember if this is a plant that is either fully extinct in nature or massively threatened due to maybe deforestation or its loss of its habitat. And I've spoken about this plant before and I've tried growing it twice, did not manage either time. The Philodendron silver sword. I can say this without feeling too guilty because there are, I think that the comment is now, they are so widely accessible most of the time for the kind of plant market that yes, it might not be in nature so much anymore, but there's enough of it commercially that you can get it, you can replace it relatively easily. It doesn't make it any better, but what I'm saying is this is not a plant that people are poaching in order to sell to us, if that makes sense. There's enough commercially now. There's a lot more. As I said, I think there's more of this in collections or in houses over what exists in nature at this point. But really, the Philodendron silver sword, really, 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 really not a plant that was anywhere near as easy as people were saying. Possibly if I was maybe, and I think this is where, and some of the other plants on this list as well, but this is one of the plants that I think if maybe I wasn't underwater, it would have been better for me. Because as an overwater, even massively pulling back, and I tried growing one at the very beginning of my planting journey and I didn't know what I was doing, so I killed that one off relatively quickly. But then I bought one more recently, I think even as recently as the old conservative, but in this house, so not that many years ago now. And it did okay. It did okay, but I could never get the light levels completely happy with it. So it was either too little light or it was bleaching it to buggery. The water, it was either too much water or too little water. It was just really, really fussy for me. And it's a shame because I like the look of the plant. I would have always loved to, like, it is one of my biggest disappointments is that I've not been able to grow this. However, I do take certain solace in the fact that what I've heard from people that have grown it well, that the fact that it grew slow for me wasn't so weird, and it wasn't necessarily that I was doing everything wrong. I'm sure it contributed to it. And I know I've heard a few people that have said it's fast for them, but I know a lot of people that have grown it happily, and they also say that it's slow. So for me, this was definitely not a plug and play plant. I really hope it was, because it's a beautiful one, but it gives me that level of PTSD that a lot of people have for calatheas. I don't even have that level of PTSD for calatheas, that a lot of people get really like, oh, never again. I've got calatheas, and I probably will always have some form of calathea in my collection. The silver sword, for however much, I would love to have it, and I would love to have it growing, and I would love the variegated form. I mean, the variegated form, if the regular one was as slow as it was, how slow is the variegated form? But yeah, sadly for me, it's a hard pass, and it's also, yeah, definitely not a plug and play. Definitely a plug and play. Especially because I'm thinking of this as if I was still a beginner. This is not a plant that I would necessarily ever recommend to a beginner. The last two plants on the list, and I'll give you the first one, are ones that you can find everywhere. And some of you might be surprised at the fact that I have struggled with both of these, that these made the list of plug and pray plants for me. First one is a group of plants. I know it's not just one, and I've tried different ones over the years. Bromeliads. I really struggle with this plant. Really, really struggle with this plant Again, the reason why I've got it on this list is not just because I struggle with it. I would imagine there's people that struggle with this because of its requirements. So, first things first, bromeliads, by and large, if I'm not mistaken, they are very closely related to air plants. And if I'm not mistaken, it does have some roots, unlike air plants, but maybe not. Like this is a while since I've had a bromeliad. And they're like, you need to water it in its pitcher, like in the middle bit. So that's weird for most beginners. They're just like, what do you mean I need to put it in the little cup thing? And like, do I also water the soil? Do I not? But then they don't tell them that it's related to the air plants, which to me would say that it doesn't need quite as much water as people think it needs. So there's that. And then there's also the element that I think, if I'm not mistaken, they're all monocarpic, which means that they will bloom once and then it will die, and everybody freaks out. And again, the reason why I'm saying a plug and pray plant with this one is because they don't have the decency to tell people that, you know what, the beautiful plant that you've just got, that it's in bloom, and you are so happy in the fact that you're keeping the bloom, because the blooms will go on for a long time, even if you're doing things wrong. But then the plant will die, and it's just like, what did I do wrong? I am such a bad plant parent, and I don't have a green thumb. And it's just like, no, that's what the plant is meant to do. You know, the little pups that you've got around it. That's how you continue this plant on with its babies. But why would they explain that to people? No, this is an easy plant, and this is all the box stores and all the supermarkets and all these things. And I get it, because it's pretty and it doesn't need an awful lot of care. But this one shocks me more so than when people say calatheas are for beginners. And I know some people who are beginners have done well with calatheas, but this one more so than anything else. And I'm just like, really? A bromeliad? A bromeliad that is very unique in the way that it would grow. And it's also sold in soil, usually very dense soil as well, is the thing that you're going with as an easy plant that everybody can buy and kill? No. Plug and pray plant. And I know some people do really well with bromeliads. I haven't tried it too much because they don't excite me really. But I know there's a lot of people. There are so many different forms of bromeliads and kind of related plants that people do really, really well with. Honorable mention here, because I did have one of the little baby like pineapples with a little baby pineapple on the top. Because again, for people that don't know, if I'm not mistaken, again, the pineapple is also closely related, the real kind of big pineapple. And you can grow it. Are you ever going to realistically get it to fruit? Maybe, but it's a labor of love. Even in its perfect conditions, it takes a long time to fruit and to mature enough to be able to pick and harvest. So go into that willingly. The other one that will have an honorable mention, even though it's not related to this, which is something that you can still buy everywhere, not a plug and pray plant. I was able to keep this going for a very long time until I binned it, which is the Arabica plant, the coffee plant. You can get this at least here in the UK, and I would imagine Europe as well, like in most supermarkets at this point. And it is an interesting foliage plant. Does it grow particularly fast? No. Will it ever give you any notion of coffee other than you can say, look, I've got a coffee plant? Booey for you. It doesn't, it makes sense. It won't smell of coffee. It doesn't, there's nothing coffee-esque about it. It's just a green leafy plant that is the coffee plant. You are never going to get it big enough in conditions indoors to ever produce anything like coffee pods. And if you don't know how coffee is made properly from these plants, there's a long process. There's a lot of things that need to happen, and there's a lot of coffee that needs to be harvested from a lot of different plants in order to make enough for you to enjoy some coffees. Have a look into that if you've never seen it. But yeah, honorable mention, not a plug and pray plant, because it is one that I generally found quite easy to keep happy, but is it the most interesting kind of foliagey type plant? And this is a bit of a bonus bit that I'm talking about here. No, one that I would suggest over that, at least in my experience, that was truly a plug and play plant, similar vibes, just green foliage, is one called the China Doll. And I'll see if I can find the name, put it at the top, the botanical name. That one, stunning plant, had it in the office. If you just want some foliagey type plant, much more interesting. Unless you want to say to people that I've got a coffee plant growing in the corner, fine. But that's all it's ever going to be. It's a bragging thing rather than anything else that you're going to get from that plant. And as promised, the last one probably isn't going to be a surprise, because I've bemoaned about the fact that this is not a plug and play plant. For me, I know that it is for a lot of people. For me, and probably for a lot of the overwaterers out there, the ZZ plant, the Zamioculcas zamifolia. Raven, green, I'm not even trying the variegated one, considering how expensive it is, because I will kill that. Toot sweet. Yes. Yeah, no. Absolutely not. Not for me. Love, I do, interestingly enough, I do like the look and feel of this plant, and I think it's entirely to do with the fact that I am an overwaterer. My brother, who isn't great with plants and is kind of like, if you think I'm frenetic, imagine the polar opposite of me. My brother's a lovely individual, but he's like very kind of chilled and relaxed. I wish I was more like him. I have nothing but love for my brother, but we are literally polar opposites. Between us, we'd make a functional human being, I always say. But, you know, he doesn't kind of go out of his way to keep things happy or kind of remembers to water and all these things. And his ZZ plants are like practically jungle plants, and they're huge, 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 huge. Very, very happy. Have I ever grown a ZZ plant in better conditions? So when it gets the true light level that it needs, not this kind of like fairy tale that they keep trying to sell it to all of us that, you know what, there are low light plants? No. Have I ever grown it in truly low light? No, I've grown it in medium light. It's not the greatest thing. But I think it was years ago when I was watching kind of Nick Pileggi. I think Nick is back on YouTube, and I'm so glad. I used to love, still do. I still love the content from Nick Pileggi. Hopefully, I'm not butchering the name. But he always used to say, if you are paying, and I agree with him 100%, if you are watering your ZZ plant more often than you are paying your mortgage or paying your rent, you are watering too much. And it's only when I started thinking it like that I was able to keep them going for a bit longer. But for me, ZZ plants are always just a slow decline. The death is inevitably going to happen, and they only ever look their best when I first get them. They will get steadily shitter and shitter and shitter and shitter until they like got one or two stems, and then I'm just like, this is pointless. What is this doing? So 100% for me, and probably for a lot of other people there who aren't entirely forgetful kind of waterers and ones that really like the overwaterers and the overcarers and all these things. This is not a plant for us. This is 100% not a plant for us. If you are an overwaterer and you've managed to find the secret sauce or the secret way of not just keeping a ZZ plant happy, but getting it to grow actively, please do let us all know down below. I would love to make this plant work for me, but as of right now, not a plug and play plant for me in any stretch of the imagination. So yes, that was my plug and pray list. There's quite a few others, but I thought I'd do a starter for 10. I am exceptionally curious to see what your list is like down below, because these are just my experiences. Care that I give these plants, how I'm kind of set up as a plant parent to care for them. Yeah, like, as I said, some of them I would always repurchase, like the Ming I love and I would probably get again. The Silver Sword I would love to make work, never getting a Ficus lyrata again in my life. The Hoya krohniana, I would love to get it to work if it will ever grow fast and stable rather than the kind of level of crazy that I have to deal with it. But yes, I think I shall let you go. Hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I truly, truly hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.